Here are all 85 narrations with a blank line separating each, formatted cleanly for muff.ai. You are carrying something right now that nobody around you fully knows about. Not because you hid it deliberately. Not because you're too proud to speak. But because when the moment comes, when the weight gets heavy enough that part of you wants to say, I need help, something inside you quietly, almost invisibly, closes. And you tell yourself you're fine. And you find another way to manage it alone. Again. If that's you, stay with me. Because what I'm about to share isn't about weakness. It isn't about pride. It's about something much deeper, something that was built inside you, long before you had the words to question it. And once you understand it clearly, something important begins to shift. In this video, we're going inside 5 deep psychological traits that develop in people who find it almost impossible to ask for help. Not surface-level habits. The actual roots. The ones that formed quietly, early, and for reasons that made complete sense at the time. Let's start with the one that goes deepest. Trait 1. You learned, somewhere early, that your needs were inconvenient. It didn't arrive in a single dramatic moment. Nobody sat you down and said those words. It came through accumulation. The sigh that followed your questions. The impatience that arrived before the answer. The emotional distance that appeared precisely at the moments you needed someone closest. The times you reached towards someone and felt them, almost imperceptibly, pull back. You absorbed all of it. Children always do. They don't have the language yet to analyze what's happening, but they feel everything. And slowly, your mind began forming a conclusion so quiet it barely registered as a thought. My needs make things harder for people. That belief never stayed in childhood. It followed you. Into every friendship, every relationship, every adult moment where help was available and standing right there. And something in you still couldn't quite reach for it. Because your nervous system no longer experiences asking for support as something natural. It experiences it as something costly. Something that requires justification. Something that might even, when given freely, leave you feeling ashamed afterward for having needed it at all. This is why some people would rather carry something until it breaks them than ask someone nearby to simply share the weight. Not because they don't want support. But because support, somewhere deep in how they learned to survive, stopped feeling like relief, and started feeling like exposure. So they became the person who says, "Don't worry about me," before anyone has even offered to worry. The person who only shares the lighter version of what they're carrying. The person who gives others endless patience, endless understanding, endless presence. And finds it almost impossible to receive the same in return. From the outside, this looks like strength. Underneath, it is often grief. The grief of a person who learned, before they had the language to question it, that needing anything from people could make them feel like a burden. Like too much. Like someone who takes up more space than they're allowed. That leaves a mark. And the nervous system never forgets. Trait 2. You trust yourself more than you trust support. Here's something easy to miss about people who struggle to ask for help. They are often not incapable. Not fragile. Not lost. In fact, many of them are unusually capable. Unusually resourceful. Unusually precise. They know how to keep going when going feels impossible. They have survived things privately that most people have never been asked to survive. And after doing that long enough, the mind arrives at a conclusion that feels like wisdom. I can only truly rely on myself. From the outside, this looks like resilience. People call it maturity, independence, admirable self-sufficiency. And in many ways, it is impressive. That part is real. But there's a cost hidden inside it that almost nobody talks about. The more a person relies exclusively on themselves, the less natural receiving support begins to feel. Not because help isn't available. But because the emotional process of accepting it, the surrender of control it requires, the trust it demands, the vulnerability it forces, starts to feel increasingly unfamiliar. And psychologically, unfamiliar starts to feel like dangerous. So instead of risking the disappointment, what if they don't understand, what if they judge me, what if they show up once and then disappear, they stay contained. It's okay. I'll handle it. Even when they're exhausted. Even when the weight is genuinely too much. Even when help is standing right there, asking nothing in return. Because here's the uncomfortable truth, for people with this trait, control can feel a lot safer than care. That's why they don't just struggle to ask for help. They struggle to receive it even when it arrives. Pause for a moment here. Think about the last time someone offered to help you, really offered, and you deflected it. Minimized it. Said you were fine. What was actually happening inside you in that moment? They say yes with their words while their body stays tense. They accept kindness and immediately feel the pull to repay it, justify it, prove they deserved it. That's not coldness. That's not selfishness. That's what happens when self-reliance stops being a choice and becomes the only home the nervous system has ever fully trusted. Trait 3. You confuse vulnerability with danger. Because when you think about asking for help, it's not just the asking that feels hard. It's what asking requires underneath it. Being seen. In a moment of genuine need. And for people with certain emotional histories, that visibility doesn't just feel uncomfortable. It carries a sense of real risk. Maybe when you opened up before, you were dismissed. Maybe your pain was compared to someone else's and found smaller. Maybe someone used what you shared as leverage later. Maybe you were taught, directly, or through years of quiet observation, that emotions were something to manage privately. That showing need was the same as showing weakness. So now, when the thought of reaching out surfaces, your mind doesn't just think about the help. It thinks about the exposure. The honesty required. The admission of need. The moment of saying clearly to another person, I cannot carry this alone. And if your nervous system has learned to associate that kind of openness with shame, with the particular ache of being vulnerable and finding nothing safe on the other side, then asking for help stops feeling like reaching out. It starts feeling like stepping off a ledge without knowing the ground is there. So what develops instead? High functionality. High composure. A private interior life that almost nobody fully sees. You process alone. You break down alone. You recover alone. And then you return to the world looking, for all appearances, completely fine. The people who love you say, you never share what you're going through. You always seem okay. You should open up more. What they don't understand is that for you, opening up has never been simply a communication skill. It's a risk calculation. Every single time. And when vulnerability has been paired with pain often enough, the mind does exactly what it was designed to do. It protects you. It closes the doors that got you hurt. It keeps things tightly managed on the inside. That's not a flaw. That was once the most reliable protection you had. But now, it might be the wall between you and the connection you actually need. Trait 4. You feel responsible for managing your pain alone. There's a particular kind of person who feels almost guilty when they need support. Not because they don't feel the weight of what they're carrying. But because somewhere inside, they've arrived at a belief they never consciously chose, that their struggles are theirs alone to solve. Their pain is theirs alone to carry. Their breaking points are theirs to manage quietly, privately, before anyone else has to be inconvenienced by them. This usually forms in people who became emotionally responsible too early. Maybe you were the calm one while everyone else fell apart. The easy one. The mature one. The child who could sense the tension in a room and made the silent decision not to add to it. Maybe you could feel the weight the adults around you were already carrying, and so you carried yours separately. Quietly. without complaint. And if that pattern continues long enough, it stops being behavior. It becomes identity. You stop experiencing support as something you deserve. You start experiencing it as something other people need more than you do. So when your own pain surfaces, your first instinct isn't to reach outward. It's to minimize. Other people have it worse. It's not that serious. I should be able to handle this. I don't want to bother anyone. That internal voice, where you invalidate yourself before anyone else gets the chance to, becomes so automatic you stop noticing it. You just know that when something hurts, the instinct is to make it smaller. To make sure nobody has to rearrange their life because of what you feel. And here's the painful irony of this trait. It almost always lives in the most deeply caring people. People who would drop everything to show up for someone else. People who are compassionate, dependable, emotionally generous in every direction except inward. Because when the pain is theirs, the rules change completely. Suddenly they become harsh with themselves. Suspicious of their own needs. Quietly embarrassed by their own limits. Not because they're hypocritical. But because somewhere in who they became, they learned that their role was to absorb pain, not share it. And over time, that creates someone who looks, from every angle, incredibly strong. While feeling on the inside profoundly, privately alone. Trait 5. Your independence has become your survival identity. For many people who struggle to ask for help, independence is not simply a preference. It's not even really a personality trait. It's identity. The deepest kind. The kind that didn't form from choice, but from necessity. Maybe you were praised for being the one who never needed much. Admired for handling things alone. Respected for your composure, your capability, your quiet self-sufficiency. Maybe the people around you only fully saw you, only fully approved of you, when you were useful. When you were strong. When you were contained. And if that happened enough, the mind does something very understandable. It merges survival behavior with self-image. You no longer simply act independent. You become the independent one. The strong one. The one who holds it together. And once that identity hardens, asking for help stops feeling like a practical decision. It starts feeling like a betrayal of who you are. Because if you're the strong one, what happens when you need something? If you're the one who holds it together, what does it mean when you fall apart? If you've always been the helper, who are you when you need to be helped? So you stay in character. Even when part of you is exhausted. Even when part of you wants nothing more than for someone to simply notice, without you having to ask, that you are not entirely fine. This is the hidden cost of a survival identity. You built a version of yourself that kept you safe. That earned you respect. That gave you a role in rooms where belonging felt uncertain. That version was necessary. It served you. But now, that same version may be keeping you disconnected from the very people who want to be close to you. Because there is a difference, a real, important difference, between healthy independence and defensive independence. Healthy independence says, I can do things on my own, and I can also receive support. Defensive independence says, if I can't do it alone, I feel exposed. Ashamed. Unsafe. One comes from confidence. The other comes from fear. And most people who struggle to ask for help never realize that the self-sufficiency they've built their entire identity around may have originally been constructed in response to disappointment. To emotional inconsistency. To early environments where needing people simply wasn't safe. Your resilience is real. Your capability is real. Your strength is real. But that doesn't mean it all came from peace. Sometimes it came from necessity. And sometimes the things we built to survive are the same things, years later, keeping us from fully living. Now let's bring it all together. Because if you saw yourself in any of this, even partially, even in flickers, there's something important psychology wants you to understand. You were not born this way. You were not wired wrong. You did not develop these patterns from weakness, or pride, or some fundamental inability to trust people. You developed them because at some point, needing people came with consequences. Because support felt uncertain. Because vulnerability felt genuinely dangerous. Because the environments you moved through, early and deeply influential, taught you without ever using those words that needing less was safer than needing more. So you learned to need less. To say less. To expect less. To carry more. And maybe that version of you was necessary once. But it may not be the version of you that heals. Because healing rarely begins with becoming someone different. It begins with understanding, clearly, without shame, with something closer to compassion, why you became who you are. It begins with seeing the child who learned to go quiet, to stay useful, to make themselves smaller, and understanding exactly what they were responding to. And then slowly, gently, giving them something they never fully received. The permission to have needs without apologizing for them. You are allowed to receive care without earning it through exhaustion first. You are allowed to ask for help and still be strong, still be capable, still be the person everyone around you relies on. Those things are not opposites. Because real strength is not silent suffering. Real strength is not carrying everything alone until something inside you quietly gives way. Real strength includes the full, honest, imperfect capacity to be human. And being human means there will be seasons, not failures, not weaknesses, but seasons, when you need someone to hold part of what you've been carrying. The opposite of hyper-independence is not helplessness. It's trust. And for people like you, people who learned earliest and most thoroughly that support was something to survive without, trust is often the hardest, most important, most quietly courageous thing to rebuild. You were never weak for needing support. You were only trying to survive in the way your mind learned best. And now, slowly, without shame, you get to learn something different. That being strong and being supported, those two things were never meant to be a choice. If this video gave language to something you've been carrying quietly for a long time, drop a comment with which of these 5 traits felt most like you. I read every single one. This channel exists for people who feel deeply, protect carefully, and have spent too long carrying things alone. If that's you, you are in the right place.
Like to learn more about human psychology? Like, comment, and share this video. Subscribe my channel now. Thank you for watching.